Hello. Oh, no, that's not it. It's not hello, it's welcome. No, wait, hang on. I do say hello, right? Yeah.
I don't think it matters, that one. I think of all the words you can change,
Hello?
it's that
Hello?
one.
Hiya. Okay.
Hey up, lad. Hey up,
Hey up.
Chuck.
Yeah.
Hey up, Chuck. Go on, you have to do that now.
And welcome to the GM's Book Club, a podcast where we take a role-playing game, read it cover to cover, rate, review, and recount what we think about it. All the R's there. I know. My name is Fiona, and with me, as always, is my first and foremost, my erstwhile, my well-trusted advisor, Hamilton. Hello, friend. How are you doing?
Hey up, Chuck. Hey up.
Yeah, we had a quick panic off recording where we're like, is it hello? Do we start with hello? Like, even the basic blocks of podcasting, that's how we're panicking today.
At the forefront, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. It's a nice sunny day here. I've been out walking. I've been out walking twice today already, which has been nice.
Damn, you got your morning walks in.
Yeah, I've walked around, went to the canal. I then sat in a hammock and then just did a recheck of this after reading about what we're talking about today. I then sat in a hammock for a bit and read that. It was very, very chill.
You are really embracing your inner hobbit there.
Yes.
I'll go for a walk, maybe some luncheon. Then I'm just going to go into my
nice
hammock.
Pipe or something. It'd be perfect.
A pint as well.
A pint
at the old Dragon.
Fiona. A pint would have gone down absolute treat. But there you go.
You would have been like, let me tell you about this game.
It's bloody Gandalf. You don't know what he's talking about.
Oh, he's bloody at it again. Yeah, I'll say here, we're in the time of summer here where I am, about 30 degrees constantly.
Yeah.
Luckily,
nice.
I'm in a place that's got air conditioning, but I've been biking a lot more because I can go on the roads here a little bit. Let me tell you, I love biking, but there's a moment where I'm like, oh, it's really nice out. I'll go biking. And I go, God, yeah, I feel, what's wrong with my back? And I'm like, oh no, sunburn. And I'm just,
I thought you said, I'm old.
I'm old. Well, there's that too. But I will say, I haven't been biking for a couple of days because my knees were hurting. And I was like, oh no. This is my fault. But yes, I too have been like going out to coffee shops and then taking my book and reading it and then going, that's enough of that. And then putting it away.
Nice.
Today, friends, what are we talking about, Hamilton?
Well, we
What's
kind
our
of
topic?
bury the lead with a couple of things there, talking about hobbits and Gandalf, but we are looking at the one, the only, the One Ring.
The One Ring, second edition, yeah.
Second edition. Weirdly, it is the second edition, but it doesn't actually say that anywhere on the book, apart from in the intro bit, when it goes, this is the One Ring, second edition. The year 2011 saw the release of the first edition. I'm assuming that was pre-Free League, the original One Ring, and then they bought the IP and released the second one.
Yeah.
I think we said this off podcast, and I'm going to highlight and preface at the beginning. It's very Free League. It's very Free League. And actually, and I think so that I'm just going to preface again the points we've just said off things we might repeat them later, so it's worth repeating them now, is that we read this as another tester for the GM's Book Club about 2 years ago, I think now.
Yeah.
And I believe at the time I was so excited about this. I was really, I thought I really wanted to run it, I really wanted to play it. Coming back to this now, 2 more years more wise and learned, and I don't know quite exactly how or why, but I found this so much more clunky, so harder to get into. Maybe it's because I've already read it, but also just because I just think the way it's laid out, the structure of the book, the wording, the verboseness of it, it's harder. So just bear with us all here.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it flits and flats around a lot more than you would want. And therefore, when we're saying, we're talking about this bit and we want to talk about another bit, we're going to be traveling from hundreds of pages to another for things that actually coalesce together, which I think is actually one of the most daunting parts about this book. Though it is in the round.
Yeah,
a very
absolutely.
good way of playing.
So, it was first released by Cubicle 7 and then taken up... Yeah, I know, of all places. Apparently, Cubicle 7 had announced a second edition, which never came to fruition due to some sort of contractual thing. And then, presumably, that's when Free League picked it up. So, the first edition came out 2011, but the one we're talking about, the second edition, is 2022. So, it's been out a couple of years at this point as well. how much of a fan are you, Hamilton, of J.R.R. Tolkien's works and just general Lord of the Rings fans? You consider yourself a
I'd say
fan?
I'm not an epic fan, but I have attempted to read the Silmarillion. So yeah. So and I've listened to the audiobook of Silmarillion a couple of times. Though my intake of that, the fact that I've had to listen to it a few times after reading it once and a half, because the first time I only got halfway, then I pushed myself to do it, is that I haven't taken much of it in. But yes. I am a big fan of it. I love the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. My mum read me the Hobbit when I was a kid, so it's like from earliest memories. The Hobbit is a big part of my life. Yeah, the artwork. When I got asked where's your happy place, it's the Shire. That's what. Do you know what I mean? That's I love going in the countryside. I like walking around like I've done today. Literally, I love doing those things. I like it because it's that sort of and I grew up in what I would say is the ultimate Shire world, Middle England, Buckinghamshire, rolling Chiltern Hills. It's literally the picture of the Hobbit land before, apart from being in New Zealand, it's pretty much that. So for me, it's a big thing.
So you can relate to it quite a bit. Yeah, because I have a similar, probably less experience. As I read The Hobbit as a kid, I attempted Lord of the Rings and I stopped 100 pages from the end because I found it too sad and trudging. Oh, I know. Yeah. I never really discovered what happened at the end. But naturally, as many people, I think, will have watched the films by Peter Jackson and and the Rings of Power and all that sort of thing. So I think the world, people will know from cultural references quite significantly.
Oh yeah, there are once or twice viewing for me. It's once or twice a year I will watch all 6 movies.
Okay. I thought you once and twice, and then I'm I will never watch them again. Okay, once or twice a year. Right.
The whole 6 extended editions. Yeah, I will go through them like a TV series. I'll just keep watching them.
I've done that as well, where you've just watched it all over a 12-hour period, and it's always been I've seen people on TikTok and Instagram doing cook-alongs and drink certain food. Really, I think, and that's the thing. It's like any cultural books or anything like that. Obviously, I know people will talk that about the Harry Potter series. I know Game of Thrones, even the Hunger Games. It's that sort of thing. So ultimately, what I'm trying to get at here,
it's better. The movies are particularly. I think there's a really good meme going around on I follow the LORTology Instagram account, and it has on there it shows Star Wars 9 movies, 3 Oscars. Harry Potter 8 movies, 12, 11 movies, no Oscars. Then he gets to Lord of the Rings, 3 movies, 17 Oscars, and it's just it's as fundamental as that. It's just, I watch all the behind the scenes stuff. I watch those over and over again. I think it's the most. Those movies are just beyond the actual books. Nothing has done. I don't think anything has ever achieved the same level of incredibleness as the original IP. In terms of J.R. Tolkien built a world, built a lore, a language, a universe, religion, a mythology, a mythos around, and put so much effort into that. I don't think anyone ever put as much effort into something equally as him, as Peter Jackson and all the team behind the Lord of the Rings movies. Sure. I think that's the thing. They hit it with exactly the same fervour and deference as he did.
I think, and again, this is coming from 2 not very well-versed Lord of the Rings fans, because let me tell you, there are some Lord of the Rings fans out there who do a lot. But I feel it's one of the most, people will say go watch the movies and read the books. It's never don't swear off them, because it's been that's such a cultural phenomenon. But what I'm getting at is that you and I both have very much nostalgia for this kind of setting. It's obviously what inspired general fantasy stuff for D&D. That's one of the big cornerstones from it. So then, with that in mind, what audience do you think the One Ring 2nd edition is aimed at?
I would think it's aimed at people who love the Lord of the Rings and play Dungeons and Dragons. I think that's it. But I think that's literally it. I think it's as simple as that. I think you're completely right that if I think about this the other day with Warhammer, because I listened to a friend of mine, Jordan Sorcery. I recommend if anyone likes Warhammer lore. He's great, does amazing YouTube videos. I'm watching his it's called Building Armies. So it just goes back into the history of all the armies of Warhammer, and always he has to start with 2 things. He's the thing that influenced Warhammer the most was D&D, and D&D was heavily influenced because of Lord of the Rings. And every single time he talks about every single thing in Warhammer, it's like, well, the orcs originate from this Beowulf story. There's an orc world, or something like Orc Wild, I think they were called, or something, or Orcwin. And that word was taken by Tolkien, who was a Beowulf scholar, a scholar of that sort of era, and created the orcs and the Uruk-hai. And then D&D had orcs, and then it came into Warhammer. And it's like, the two most influential things in fantasy ever are Lord of the Rings for like all the sort of stuff, and then D&D. I think secondly for like arguably, I think D&D has directly influenced more things in our popular culture today than anything else. But D&D was only about probably because of Lord of the Rings popularity at that time.
So then on top of that, why would we then play the One Ring role-playing game, second edition, using Free League system? Because there technically, glasses up, the 5th edition version of it.
Now, I would ask you that because I don't know, because I've not actually looked at One Ring 5e, Lord of the Rings 5th edition. I would suggest, though, from reading this book, that the 5th edition is an heroic fantasy, right? Yeah. You are going to create characters in 5th edition that will be literal gods at the end of it, right? But literally, like a wizard can change fundamental time-space continuum through a wish spell. You can create, you are an immense, powerful being on the scale, if not greater, than Gandalf themselves. You know, you're probably even more powerful than Sauron. You know, like you are that level of wizard. That is not Lord of the Rings, and that is definitely not the One Ring, because the One Ring, you're not even Frodo, Samwise, Gandalf, Saruman, you're not even a Númenorian blooded person of Aragon or any of these things. So you are much more basic, and therefore I don't see anyone being part. I don't think if you had One Ring 5e, how you could ever become further than say level 10 maximum. I would suggest maybe between 5 and 10 is probably like you would find a level, and that's what it feels like this game is about, because you were not that special. No, the only other thing I'd say is the wording around combat in this game, particularly, and what you're focusing on in this book. And like, it's actually quite hard to decipher what the point of the game is, to be honest, because actually when you read through it's a weirdly worded text in terms of like, you don't really want to get in combat. It's deadly, it's dangerous, it's not very fair, and things bad will happen, and you most of the time want to run away from them, is kind of the wording. So you're like, well, it's not a combat focused game. Okay, fine. So what is it? It's like, okay, you're going to have a patron. We can get into that a bit more, but the point is, D&D is a combat-focused game at the fundamental point of its rule structure, whilst this game is not. But this game also, I don't think, quite knows what it is, if I'm going to be brutally honest with it, because it's like, well, it's kind of like, it's scenes game. It's a little bit like Masks or Powered by the Apocalypse type games, where you're going to be like, scene by scene, playing out, uncovering the shadow. Bad things are happening in the world, and your part of it is somewhat linked to reducing or understanding the coming threat that is going to be between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. That is the setting. And so the game tries to build that. I would argue that actually it fails greater in its parts, because in some respects, I think Blade Runner, which actually, for me, I will constantly go back on the point that I think that is the best way to teach people how to make a crime-solving sleuth-like detective game, that this is kind of what it wants to be.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's trying to make it a fantasy book at the same time by making it like, well, you fight orcs and there are wolves and stuff like that. But really, actually, what you're doing is seeking out corruption and trying to avert it or uncover secrets of the coming war.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you agree with that, but
I think I've got some thoughts on it. But just to go back to your 5th edition stuff, so it is available. The One Ring 5th edition on D&D Beyond. So I had a quick look just now, and all they've done, they've changed a couple of the skills around so that we now have stuff like explore, hunt. History is now called Old Lore. We have riddle and travel, and they don't use arcana or religion. So it is sort of swapped in and out. So they do. I will say it's quite good in terms of like, it isn't exactly the D&D as you know. So it's not just like plonked on top, which I think is very good. It also has some additional rule variants for the dice rolling. I know we've not really spoken about the dice yet, but I thought that was quite interesting. So, yeah, I think for me, ultimately, what I think it's trying to get across is that, yes, here is the big Middle Earth setting. You are going to be playing in the period between the end of Where the Hobbit is and the start of Lord of the Rings. So it's using those stories, which again, fans will know of, and all the bits in between the two, launch off and do your own little side quests, but they are small and maybe don't impact everything. They're not going to be your home brew or anything like that. I feel like it says like a big thing about like, hey, this is your canon. You can be whatever you want. I know some people won't like that because, again, the Lord of the Rings fandom is quite solid about these things because there's so much work on it. But I think I agree. It's like you need a real solid purpose about what your characters are doing, because the core book is trying to do is give you the tools and the vibes. I want to say vibes here to do exactly what you see in the movies, because ultimately, let's face it, the Fellowship of the Ring is about 9 men going back to the shops to return some faulty jewelry. That is essentially it, right? And it's just a journey. I know that sounds really catty, but that's what it's about, the journey, which again, the One Ring does quite a lot of.
100%.
The combat in it is supposed to be brutal and grim and gritty, and that you're not supposed to do it. This is the thing I don't think I get across, whereas D&D is like, it is part of the thing. If you're in combat in Lord of the Rings, you don't know if you're going to survive because I think it is incredibly brutal. So like I said, the traveling, they have these sections called councils where, again, it could be quite an intense political thing really cool, where you're trying to get people to come on your side and give you allies. So it is cinematic. That's what I think it's trying to be. It's trying to be a cinematic Lord of the Rings type film, which I think it does very well. But in the core book, it doesn't give you things to jump off of necessarily. There's got some locations and stuff like that. Yeah. What I will say, I have played the One Ring starter set a long time ago. Firstly, I want to say it is on stream somewhere. Secondly, I know we play it wrong because I had to look up the rules afterwards because it was all over the place, which is quite funny. And thirdly, it is a completely different vibe to the rest of the book. The starter set feels a lot like The Hobbit because you are playing hobbits. You are in the Shire doing a few bits and pieces for Bilbo, and it's all quite fun and it's all really silly. And then you go to the core book going like, I want to continue this. And it's like, bah, death, shadow, blah. And you're like, oh my God. So again, it feels two different tones. I kind of wish there was a starter set which really tried to capture some of the more darker themes of it. But I think they're trying to get people in to be like, you love hobbits, don't you? Tee-hee-hee.
Yeah. On that, I would recommend The Ruins of the Lost Realm, which that was what you might be about to say. I don't know if you've read that.
No, go for it.
Well, it's a really good supplement. It looks at Eriador particularly, which is the Lost Realm it talks about, and there's the realm in which Lindon and the Shire and Bree and the edge of which is where Rivendell is, and it's the area you see in the inside cover is Eriador, and it sort of gives you much more in-depth. It looks particularly at a place known as Darbad as one of the big places, and it's really interesting. It gives you, like, someone who's in charge sort of getting corrupted. There's something dodgy going on, and it's some sort of more political intrigue. You're trying to figure out what's going on. You're trying to create connections between people and oust bad people who are, like, causing this bad corruption, and try and figure out the secrets of what's going on underneath all of this. And it plays a little bit like more like, yes, I think the Rings of Power stories a little bit more feels, I'd say it's more that than it is maybe the Lord of the Rings, that book, because it's more people in places rather than grand adventures. But you're right. I think you made a really great point that it's trying to be the Lord of the Rings. And the other thing that I was going to say, and I agree totally with, is it doesn't give you that sense of how you do that. Like the adventuring in Middle-earth part of the book, which is 207, so you're already at the end of the book. And it kind of explains now, like, when, where, what, who. Oh my gosh, it's the end of our episode.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, exactly. And those things are kind of interesting, but they don't really actually... I don't think they do a very good way of I don't think that is actually the best way of explaining it, personally, because I think it doesn't explain exactly what you said, which is what you need is a particular thing to think of. And I think, like, a good example, I know I'm rambling a bit here, but my thinking on this is the bit where Gandalf disappears off to find the necromancer, as he calls it, is exactly the sort of story you need to be thinking about, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
you should be taking, like, there is a weird thing in the mountains that is doing weird stuff and everyone's scared of it and they don't know why. That's where you come in, okay?
Yeah.
And your patron is telling you this. You are meant to go investigate this thing. There will be some combat. There will be some encounters that you can deal with through the encounter. In this book, then, it'll be like, okay, so you have a patron. So the patron will go, there's a weird thing in the forest. Go to the forest, okay?
Yeah.
Then you get to use your adventuring phase. And in the adventuring phase, you then use we're doing the exploration bit, where it gives you a certain set of roles that you can use in this book that give you encounters and how to resolve encounters without using combat rules themselves. But you can have combat-style encounters, but not have to do the actual full combat. Then you might get to this location and then have a combat, use a combat. And then and that's scene by scene by scene. And then the scene, maybe you get lost in the forest and then get tricked by some trickster that's kind of related or unrelated or another thing. And here we might drop some lore about Sauron coming back, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Then you get to the thing in the mountains, figure out what that is. Maybe there's people that are involved. And that's the end of it. Then Fellowship fades once you've defeated the thing in the forest and figured out what it was and told Gandalf what it is. And that's kind of how I feel it. That's what I think it's trying to make. I don't know if I'm right there, but that's how that's how I've taken from it.
And I think you make it an interesting point about, like, you have, like, Gandalf's him, Tom Bombadil or something, but you aren't playing those characters. It's very much like, interesting, Cubicle 7 do the Doctor Who TTRPG as well, where you can play the Doctor. Yeah, I know. As well as any companions. And it's like, why would you want to do that? Because, like, that feels like, well, that story is going to be about that person and all that stuff. But equally, you kind of need them in there somewhere. So then it comes a question of, like, IPs in general. It's like, why are you playing it because you want to play your character in the setting where you meet stuff, or do you want to play Gandalf? Do you want to play the Fellowship and then do your own story? So I think that's the key thing here. Is like, who do I want to play in this? And do I want to meet these characters? And I know, like, we have the Walking Dead IP by Free League as well, and you've got some of their famous characters from the TV show and from the comics that also turn up there. I don't know about Blade Runner necessarily, but it's that sort of thing where I'm like, what's the purpose of this? I will say what I do find interesting is that, as I said, in the One Ring core book, there doesn't seem to be an adventure or anything like that. In Alien, there was, like, a very short adventure that you could play through. In Vaesen, their other game, which I appreciate is not AP, but they've got lots of different sort of story hooks that you could play through. I do wonder if what is missing is a quick couple of scenarios that you could play out. Maybe they are hidden somewhere, like they've got the location stuff, and you could do this, but, like, actually go, hey, here's the things. Maybe, like, the first adventure from the starter set and put it in there to run through, because this feels like you have to know your stuff about like Lord of the Rings, as well as be good enough to run a game using this system and then build your own adventure. Those are three big things, which is a lot for somebody who might just be a big fan of Lord of the Rings and is going, I want to run this, but I don't want to run D&D. You know what I mean? Like, I feel there's a lot of prep you have to do to get a very satisfying thing. Because I will say, all the stuff for this second edition, for the Free League system, like, I can see it and I feel like I could do a decent job of it, but I couldn't do all the parts at once. It's very overwhelming, this book. Yeah. With all the different parts to it.
I think that's a general thing with IP. I think, like, I've talked to you and talking about doing another thing in Warhammer Worlds, and, like, everyone who goes, well, I'd love to play in it, but I don't know anything about it. Like, it'll be fine. When I play Faerun things, no one goes, oh shit, I don't know anything about Baldur's Gate. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just know the game. Or, like, I don't know really about Neverwinter, but we're here, and it's fun. And people are sort of okay. But when it comes to IP, people will freak out a little bit more. And I totally get it, because they're like, I don't want to get it wrong. I understand, like, there's a sort of, like, I want to get it right for people. I want to know what I'm doing. But I think IPs make that more of a thing. And I know Lord of the Rings does. Yeah, and talk about Warhammer, like, Cubicle 7 creates both Wrath and Glory, where you can play as actual Space Marines, which is stupid, because I think playing as Space Marines is bloody mad, because they're meant to be, abhuman super soldiers that are completely devoid of real emotion and all these sorts of things. And how do you play as that? Seems completely wild a role-playing system. You know, I mean, of course people are allowed to play whatever they want to play, but to me it seems like that's too much, man. That's too big. It's like playing Gandalf. It's like that's a big thing. I know people might want to do that, but the fact that I'm much more akin to like games like Imperium Maledictum, where you're playing as like, you know, inquisitorial agent or just a random person who's been picked up by the Space Marines, feels so much more comfortable for people to accept and be a part of. And particularly in this world where, like Lord of the Rings, where it's like, okay, well, you know what a fantasy person is like, you know what a fantasy realm is like. Well, the Lord of the Rings, you probably know a bit more about. You're just playing a person of Bree, you know, so it's just a medieval village, and you're just a medieval villager, you know, but you just happen to have met a wizard, and that wizard happens to be Gandalf. You don't need to know much because a person of Bree does not know anything about, maybe might have heard of Eriador and like may have heard of the lost city of, you know, Gondor, you know, the lost kingdom of Gondor and how it used to rise, and there's some fantasy tales, but you shouldn't really know anything because you're just a bloke or a bloquette who who just works at the pub, you know, and that's kind of it, you know. And maybe if you're an elf you might know a bit more, but then you can make a decision, you know what I mean? It's like I think that's. I think it's a good thing that you don't play Gandalf.
I agree completely. I'm going to talk about my biggest critique of this book, which I think you agree about, which is, so this book in total is, according to PDF, 248 pages, right?
Yeah.
I feel it does not need to be 248 pages. No. I think you could have got all this done, I think, maybe in 150 pages.
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking, 150.
Yeah, because I feel like it takes so long and it's so verbose. And you and I have talked a little bit about the structure of it. There's 9 chapters plus an appendix. The structure of it's all a bit over the place, but it feels very freely. I think that's the thing we don't really talk about freely books, is that there's a lot of stuff in them, which is great, but I will say the writing in this feels so overdone. Like, one of my things is always like, for example, I really love the GM getting a cool name. I think the Lore Master, great, I love it. I don't need Lore Master every single time we're mentioning the Lore Master, because the Lore Master is a lot of words, and it just kept coming up, and it kept, when I was reading it through, especially if I'm reading it aloud, which is something that's what I tend to do because that's how I get it in, I'm just repeating myself over and over again. And I know there's this whole thing about like, hey, if we're getting a lot of, I'm trying to find the bit, I need to find it. Oh, I've opened a page and it's there. It's because it's been repeated several times. But I'm just there going like, I am finding it so verbose and so dense, along with the fact that it's 2 columns as well. I hate 2 columns. That's not my favourite thing. And it's small writing, really small writing as well, certainly on the PDF. So, and I do think like it's well laid out, and there's some nice images that, again, could do the vibes of it, but... Ooh. I'm
looking at the book and it's making me want, because I'm agreeing with you. Because look, like it's this page is a great example, right?
Oh, God.
So this is, you know,
the heroic cultures page, Yeah,
so it's the page where it explains, before you actually get into your cultures, your adventurers, it does 3 pages, but it's actually 4 because there's 1 page full of images. But there's 3 pages on what you're about to see on these pages, which are... I've got a characteristics explanation on this page that is larger in text than a characteristic explanation for an actual career. Do you know what I mean? For an actual heroic culture. So Bardings, it says less about the characteristics of Bardings than it explains to me what characteristics means, which I think is wild, right? Yeah. And it's like, it goes, this section offers a number... I'm just going to read it because it's ridiculously unnecessary. The section offers a number of details to find the appearance of a typical hero belonging to that culture and includes information about their adventuring age and martial tradition. A character's age is recording on the character sheet. In general, heroes rarely start with their adventuring career before they are deemed fully grown by their culture. On the other hand, if they progress too far into adulthood without answering the call to adventure, then they probably won't heed it at all. Moreover, it provides a description of their cultural blessing, a special ability possessed by all player heroes belonging to that culture, from the stout-hearted quality of the Bardlings to the redoubtable nature of the dwarves. And there's things in things, and there's still a bit that may questionably include information defining a particular weakness or limitation associated with the members of the culture. The section is concluded by a rough indication of the starting resource available to the adventurer belonging to that culture in the form of a standard of living. The game ranks the economic status of folk and status poor, frugal, common, and you're like... You know what I mean? That is the most useless piece of text. I know what characteristics means, and I can figure it out by reading the characteristics, which says strong in body fit. I don't need you to tell me what characteristics means. I can figure it out by the page that says characteristics, because I know that as a terminology, and explains the characteristics of a barding or a dwarf.
It feels like, again, you were saying before that this game is aimed at Lord of the Rings fans, but also D&D fans.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're trying to appeal then to people who are just Lord of the Rings fans who want to play. And so that's why they're doing oversimplified stuff.
I think you're right there, but I don't think there's many people that are going to just be Lord of the Rings fans and are going to go, I want to play Lord of the Rings, the role-playing game, and don't go to Dungeons & Dragons first. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. So here's the thing, like, I think I maybe have talked to you before about it, but one of the things I always find interesting is that there was like an article years and years ago, and forgive me if I'm not quoting the name or anything like that, where it talked about like how we use language online versus like in our lives. So imagine the CEO of a business. They go in, they do the meetings, they're doing the jargon, all this, talk, and it's just like a lot of jargon, a lot of bits and pieces. But when they go home, they're not going to be like reading books on jargon or anything like that. Realistically, they're going to be on, at the time, the reference was a BuzzFeed or Facebook, and it's using very simplistic language to get the information across simpler. So that's why when I was in my job at higher education, I had to be like, hey, those big long sentences that you're writing these, academic papers for, got to get rid of the academic paper side of it. You've got to do it as simple as possible to get that information across. Yes. You need to water it down.
When you're talking about, you were talking about like defining a course, how do you explain what the course is? You don't write it by saying, it is a juxtaposition of the antiquarian thought processes that one undertakes when in explaining the unexplainable. Yeah. That's bullshit. You know what I mean? They will write like that, not, this is a course where you will learn about physics. Great, thank you. Sign up.
Exactly. It's just, especially because in our age, we are, a lot of it we're learning is learning online. I read a lot of my PDFs and books on computers. Yeah. The way we read on computers is so different to how we read in books. So I find it fascinating that this has got through. And again, I'm not saying we can't have it in this verbose like state. I just think a copy edit needs to be done and gone like, cool, here's where we can find things.
I agree. It's nice to have flowery, fruity language, but my point was that there's 3 pages here describing what you're going to find on the following pages, and it's so obvious when you get to those pages what those things are. And it's not done with any glitter either, to be honest. And I do mean that seriously, because it actually is quite dense looking. And like, do I need to read this? And you start reading, you realize you don't need to it. There might actually be something in here you didn't read, which is like explains target numbers randomly here, which actually have already been talked about earlier, but whatever. So you didn't need to read it again. And then you start reading about the fun things, which is what the dwarves are and what the elves are and what the hobbits are, and the attributes are, and you can figure it out by them. Do you know what I mean?
It's interesting. That's why I would always recommend, and I don't normally do this, but like if you're like, I just want to know the rules, I don't need to know character stuff. Like if you go to the starter set, first of all, the starter set does the exact thing.
It's good actually. Yeah.
I think it's very good because again, the individual booklets you get one for rules, you get one for the setting, and one for the adventures. And then the rules one, it talks, instantly it's like action resolution. It has the tiniest bit on what your characteristics are and your skills, and it's just like done. Combat, endurance, hope, valor, and then general adventuring. You're done. Great. Yeah. That's all you need to know to get going, and you should be excited about it. And incidentally, you are playing in a starter set. You're playing hobbits, right? But you're playing people who actually are in like mentions in the thing. Like I played Lobelia Baggins, who I love. I think she's a great character. But you know what I mean? So you are still playing Bagginses, and so you can still have those names and stuff like that, but they might not have been fully fleshed out compared to other characters that we see in the books. Yeah. So yeah, it's if people come after this and go like, oh, we read it through, I'm like, well done. Good Lord, we've read it through several times now, and I have the same thing as you. My heart kind of sinks because I know what the game mechanic is. I really like the game mechanic. I think it's really interesting, but I have no reason to go to that core book. I don't think. I think I'd always use the starter set rules and then a little bit of the core book when we come up to shadow
choosing
tests.
Characters and
choosing characters as well. But even then, that's a quite simplistic process, I think, and it could have been easily its own booklet. I know I keep going on about like everything should be its own booklet, just for ease, you know.
I kind of agree with you. Well, it's probably worth then, as you mentioned it, like what are the key ways that it works then? Like how would you describe the feat and success dice, and how does that work, and how does it differ from other systems and the pre-league system?
So as I have it, you have feat and success dice. Feat dice are d12s, which, hooray, we all love a good d12, and success dice are d6s. What I believe is the case is that obviously, you need to assess when you're going to roll and all that sort of thing. And then there's a point where you're going to make a test and you're not sure you're going to succeed, that's when you roll. So eventually you get one of these feat dice, so the d12s, plus a number of success dice equal to the rating of the appropriate ability that you have. You add up the dice in total, and then you compare it to the target number that's associated with your ability. So here, your abilities are strength, heart, and wit, and these are determined sort of by the different sort of things there. And then you can have skills underneath them, which are sort of more specialized. So for strength, for example, you've got like athletics, awareness, song, craft, etc. It's interesting that we've got a lot of skills here, and a lot of skills that are spread out over the three big abilities, so that you can, you'll always be good at something. Like if you might not be great at song, whatever that is, but you'll be good at courtesy. It's trying to make sure that you always have a go at doing what it's trying to specialize your character in that sense. I will say though, the amount of skills that there's so many of them, and I just don't think they're necessary. I think that they're fine as is. What I do like, though, in this system is that ultimately your target number is going to be unique to your character. It's not like this D&D, like the DC is 14, right? It's like, okay, your strength target number, it's a 15, whether it's and there's two ways to work it out. Either it's like the easy way of taking, I can't remember what it was, something off 20.
But you take your strength value off 20. So if you've got a 7 in strength, then it's 13 you have to roll over. But you can also do, like, if you want to make it a one shot, it says, or like a simple game, you might make it 7 from 18. So it'll be like 11.
Exactly.
You have to roll over.
Which I thought that was really interesting, that you could change it around so that people feel more heroic because they're succeeding more. Because ultimately, I think the bell curve, I believe it's worked out to be like 14 and 17 often. One thing to note, though, on the feat dice, 12 is Gandalf's rune, which it always makes me laugh to say, you rolled a Gandalf, congrats. So that's like almost like a critical success, and then obviously you piled on the success dice on top of that. However, if you roll an 11, so you're not the best, it is the Sauron eye, essentially. Ultimately, it just means 0. You roll it, it means 0. Doesn't mean you will not necessarily succeed, because your success die in that roll might add up to, and you might pass it. But I really like that. I like that going like, it's so good, but it's not good enough, and so then it's at 0, and therefore you will probably fail as a result. So I think as a basis, it's very simple. Yeah. The other thing to note as well is that 4, 5, and 6 on certainly the success die, they can mean special things depending on what you're rolling, certainly in combat. Basically, higher numbers are good. That's the kind of thing I want to get across to people. There's some like nitty-gritty stuff. Apart from Sauron's eye, but other than that, yes. So, and that's kind of like the basic mechanic sort of going forward. There's other bits and pieces. I do like how they talk about favoured and ill-favoured as the advantage disadvantage. Like, again, the terminology, I can't fault. I kind of like it. But that's kind of the main vibe I got from the dice mechanic, was just very simple. High numbers are good, apart from 11.
It's a nice system. It works quite well, and it's like you get more success dice to use the more advanced you are in the certain skills that you have. And the skills are limited, which is quite nice. There's not too many. It's not, we lamented on some other ones where, particularly the old Wooferup, where it was skills and talents galore, whilst this hasn't
specialities
really,
on that on the sheet.
On top of that, exactly, and different types of skills as well, basic skills and advanced skills and all those things as well. It's actually a lot more simplistic. I think the other key, there's really good concepts or like mechanics in this game which I think fit so well to the setting and work so well for it. I really like wisdom and valor and the virtues as well, and contrary to those as well, the flaws, which come along with corruption and the shadow path. And I think those are things that are on top of like having a particular dice mechanic that actually make this game Lord of the Rings, if that makes sense. So wisdom and valor is things that you can, like, the heroic state of adventure can be measured in two different ways. The One Ring uses two gauges for how an adventure grows over the course of the game: valor and wisdom. These scores increase as player hero overcomes challenges that others dare not undertake. They are profoundly different to other types of characteristics, both in what they represent and the influence on the game. You can choose kind of which path you take, but it's like when you can, if you choose wisdom over valor when spending experience points, it suggests the adventure is affecting the player hero subtly but profoundly. Starting out as a naive individual with an adventure spirit, adventurers can achieve maturity and sagacity of wiseness, I guess. If a player decides in favor of valor over wisdom in the course of the game, the status of the player hero and the eyes of the others will determine primarily their actions and deeds. Even from the lowliest start as a wandering adventurer, adventurers may one day earn the repute and respect of famous heroes or knights. And I think it's an interesting bit because it kind of, one uses heart, which is your valor, and wits uses your wisdom. And I think it's a really interesting way of like giving you that cinematic idea of the particular progression that's gained by all the characters throughout the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. Famously how Bilbo gains courage. The whole thing of that book is him being someone who wants to adventure but is scared to, and slowly through the book gains not only courage but then further wisdom in that courage through, like, the classic line of like where he saves Gollum and says he shouldn't have, and actually sometimes wisdom courage comes from the choosing not to strike or something like that. I can't remember the actual wording off the top of my head. And it's those sorts of things which kind of work really well. And then on top of that, these virtues that you can take, which that come from your particular, that just come naturally. You can have confidence, doer-handed, prowess, nimbleness, but as well from your particular heroic lineage that you take, such as being, I'm just saying, for example, like Virtue of the Dwarves, that you can Ancient Times Dwarves, broken spells, the Ancient Times of Dwarves made mighty spells. You have been taught fragments of an old enchantment that retain some power to this day. Choose one skill for each category of strength, heart, and wit, and mark them with a dot on your character sheet. Whenever you use any of these three marked skills, you can spend one hope to achieve a magical success. So it's kind of like nice, like virtues, not quite like, it's just things that little benefits that you gain that fit with the lore of your character much more than actually what you get on the character sheet. And then finally, the flaws, which are taken from the classes in this game, which are all known as calling. So you have Captain, Champion, Messenger, Treasure Hunter, Scholar, and Warden. And you can then take these flaws, which are then when you take corruption, so if you experience something awful, you witness it, you do something bad, like you let someone die, or you don't save someone, or you choose to ignore something that's going on, or you maybe take that bit of treasure that you shouldn't have, that then you move along this shadowed path, which can lead you down to ruin in a particular way. And it's a really great role-playing thing. And you can imagine from talking about the Hobbit, particularly Thorin, who gets the sort of like the gold rush curse of, like, he sees when he becomes the Arkenstone, he gets the Arkenstone in the Undermountain, and then becomes completely miserly, and everyone's trying to steal from him, and sees bandits everywhere and thieves on the line. And so he's got this dragon sickness, as it says, like mistrustful, deceitful, thieving. You have discovered that anything you desire could be yours, and you have to take it, and your prize possessions start to weigh you down and become a treasure to be guarded. Even the good advice of friends appears to mask dubious intentions. So it's those kind of things, and seeing that when you take these shadow points on your shadow path, so like if you do anything wrong, you slowly gain. If you start off in that dragon system as grasping, which is you seek to accumulate gold and precious items, and then you become mistrustful of everyone, and then you become deceitful, and you just misleading others, and then you start thieving everything. And I kind of love this. It's really thematic. And so those are the mechanics for me that are like, yes, it's the Lord of the Rings.
It's so interesting because that's the thing, is that ultimately, Lord of the Rings isn't, for me, when I think of heroic fantasy, it's very much like, haha, we're going to defeat the evil. But actually, it is a tale of these flawed characters who get burnt out. It's so funny you talking about Bilbo before becoming more confident and like doing the right thing, even though he doesn't think it is. You think of Frodo. Basically, Lord of the Rings is just a long, drawn-out burnout for Frodo as this positive, happy person who takes on a mammoth task, which is beyond his capabilities, but he does it through friendship, through hard graft, and he's completely changed by the end of it. And I do think, like you said, it's so interesting because stuff like this, that sort of story arc, that narrative stuff, for me, is a conversation. It isn't necessarily mechanical, and having it so to have it sort of formalized in a certain way, I think is really interesting. I wonder for me if it's too gritty, too much. But actually, I don't know any other game that would encourage that as like role play as a thing, because you've got, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like, because it's so in keeping with what I think of the stories of the Lord of the Rings. So yeah, and just to go on quickly, you're saying like, all the different heroic cultures can be any of the callings. You're not limited because, you're a dwarf, you can only do these two callings. Maybe there is some min-maxing that can happen. I don't know, but I just thought that was really great, actually, that, you can play a hobbit that, you know what, they are a treasure hunter, or they are a champion, even though the lore is like, well, they like that bit, and they're like, they do the, slap knees and stay with their food, and they like hearing stuff. So, yeah, I just thought that was really cool. Yeah. So again, it feels almost at odds with like, you can be anyone in this world of it. However, you have to be between these two time periods and, all that sort of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. It again goes with that, to me, that sort of like mishmash of identity about what this game is trying to be and who's it trying to be to what people. But I just wanted to commend that. It's nice that you're not shoehorned into like, if you're playing this kind of, the Bardings, they can only do this. If you're playing a Man of Bree, you can only do this. You know what I mean?
No, I totally agree. No, it's really well put together that way.
I quite like how you don't play someone that has magical powers, because I think it could be very easy that you could do. I don't know, again, in any of the supplements, if you can get that, if it's an additional thing, but any magic is left to like the patron, like, Gandalf or anything like that. I think that's great, because then I feel like it just feels really home. Because ultimately the fantasy stuff, that what we see in Lord of the Rings, it's so limited in the magic stuff. It is just to the wizards. It's a bit like how I compare it to Star Wars. Like, if you watch the original A New Hope or anything like that, the lightsabers only really come out towards the end to fight.
Oh, yeah.
And then in the new stuff, it's like, blah, 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 blah. They're everywhere.
On that, Star Wars saying, it's like, but that's why everyone loves Andor and loves Rogue One, because they are nothing to do. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, Fiona is literally hitting the screen going, yes!
Slay! Yes! Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I think that's the thing. I think it's easy where people go, cool, I could be this great. And then when they play it, go, this is not what I expect for. Yes, because you are a normal person that's been thrust upon this great quest, and you have to go convince these elves who probably don't like you, or you got to go convince people to come and help you stop a great evil that people probably don't believe is happening. Again, I think there's a lot of stuff about climate change you could talk about here, or anything like there's a great evil coming, and people just going, well, we're going to sail away to the west, and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? You can't sail, you got to help me, so I think, again, narratively, it's interesting. The more we talk about it, the more I'm like, I can probably see a story with it, but in my head I'm like, I don't know if I'd use the system for it, which I think is really sad, because I really like that basic feat dice and success dice. I think that's quite interesting.
I think that's what it gets right. These are the things it gets really right. And I think, and as you said, like having the rules for the council, particularly in that sense, works really well. You've got to be convincing people this is part of the story. And the fact that clearly the people that have written this have read the books and watched the movies and understand the lore and the setting completely well, because it is at the fundamental, as you said, it's a story of, it's a story about, that's why it's so resonant, because unlike all the other, like a lot of these other ones, I think personally, I've not actually read Game of Thrones, but I've read Harry Potter, and I've read, a long time ago, I wouldn't read it now, but when I was a kid, but also all of the Wheel of Time series, read all those. Like, the things that endure in the Wheel of Time, and the thing that why I think the Wheel of Time is incredible, as incredible, not as incredible, is closer to being as good as that, is because the things that it talks about, that the best part of it is human development. And like the struggle, and and fantasy is a great way of putting people into a situation which is going to separate you from your reality and your real world woes, but also allow you to embrace the human condition in a way that is fantastical and it's extreme, but also at the same time in the extremities of these things, realizing that humanity is equally, or the things that we call humanity, as in like not humanity, but like your human, like emotionality or whatever, is critical. And like we all know Lord of the Rings is a response to not only the destruction and terror of World War, that just occurred, and seeing the destruction in front of him, and the weight of all those things, and the thing, losing all your friends and those things, and the struggle to strive through, and all the famous line of you can't choose the time you were born in, you can only choose to do what you can do in the time you were given, sort of thing, and like those famous points, and also there's a lot of talk on like the Lord of the Rings being, Frodo and the ring being an allegory for addiction, and how like this, it's mine, I need it, but actually it's killing me, and this thing, and like you actually need to relinquish it, and Frodo basically goes through it's basically train spotting. Frodo is literally having a train spotting experience whilst everyone else is fucking trying to save the world, and the poor Frodo is seeing babies' heads turn on their back on themselves and flow down a toilet. That is what Frodo is dealing with, whilst everyone else is experiencing another movie. He is experiencing train spotting. He is in a back end of a Glaswegian toilet. That is his life. And that's the thing that's so much powerful about it, because unlike Bilbo's story, which is a strive to courage, Frodo is a need to. Is a grueling task undertaken, burdensome on one particular person for the benefit of everyone, and everyone's desire to help them, and they cannot be helped. It's only down to them because they are, and it's so fundamental. And this book does its darndest to do that, I think.
This is the thing. I feel like, obviously, you could play anyone and anything in role-playing games, but obviously the films and the book primarily focus on men and male stories and male fellowship and stuff like that, and like the whole connotations of Sam and Frodo stuff. And I just think to myself, like, it would be, if you have a more of a mixed gender party, or maybe a fully female or femme presenting party, I just think those stories are also interesting to tell, and I kind of would want the book to encourage that a little bit. And obviously it does. It doesn't, it doesn't say you are limited by these things. But I always think that is something that is quite true of it. No, I know I made the joke earlier of like 9 men go return some jewelry. But, it's interesting because obviously it's all about status and all that. And obviously at the time, that's the kind of, things that we didn't really talk about losing friends, about love, and showing emotion between each other.
I totally agree that like it lacks its female counterpart, but I think it is the most enduring story of positive masculinity that there ever has been written that I can think of that is popular, because like it shows, it hits back at so many toxic masculine traits throughout the book, like it's fundamental to it. The pride that can be held, the status in combat and war, the requirement for brute force and gruntness, and all these things that are considered manly are destroyed by true courage and true respect for one another and fellowship, and those things, and the overcoming of pride and those things, like the things that we see as toxic in masculinity are brutally ruined through the Lord of the Rings, and all those things are seen as corrupting influences. The greed of man, Boromir is like, I am a Boromir stan, okay? Like me and Am will fight anyone who says Boromir, there is no Faramir in this house, okay? Like,
no
Faramir, great, right? But Boromir is like, okay, Denethor is an idiot, and he didn't like Faramir, but I get why, because Boromir's story, right? No, but Boromir's story is the true story of redemption. Like, Faramir's a dude, and he's always been good, but he was never corrupted by it because he never had to deal with the corruption. He was too good. He was too good in himself. And so for him, his actual journey, sorry, I'm going to get into this, is that he just is a good guy, and he doesn't have, but Boromir sees the corruption, falls to corruption, but he overcomes it and realizes the error of his ways and sacrifices himself for everyone. So Boromir is the goat. Okay, so there we go. But I think that's the point of the book, isn't it? And so, I know that I totally agree that the thing that it would be great to see is the introduction of like stories that deal with the less, feminine aspects of
which I do want to say that the Rings of Power does try to do.
Galadriel being an equal, like an epic case. It's an unfortunate fact of its time, but I think that the thing that you couldn't ever lose the fact that the one thing that you've got to take away from it for people looking for good male archetype role models. Lord of the Rings is a good place to start.
I agree.
I think
yes.
is all I'd say. So,
I agree.
which I think is something that lacks this day and age, with quite a lot of toxic masculinity out there in the manosphere.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. To go back to the role-playing game bit, it turns out we're critiquing Lord of the Rings. No. It's good. I think this thing's we're drawing from what the setting is, and it's interesting that we're talking about these stories. I'm like, God, yeah, that would be a cool story to play. That'd be cool. You know, so I'm actually feeling that, whereas I wasn't so sure at the beginning of this recording session. One thing I wanted to point out in this book, I think what does it quite well, and something I would take into other games, is that it talks about, you know, the structure of the game. So, like, you have the adventuring phase, which majority of the role play is going to be, and then you have the fellowship phase, which is kind of like the downtime and whatnot, and like between assignments. And again, I quite like that because, again, it just formalizes it. Like, you know, D&D talks about like downtime, Blades in the Dark, all these things. But what I really love is that at some point you'll do a phase called Yule, which is like the end of year. It's what I think it's the festival episode. It's this. And one point of it, actually, I thought was really interesting and really fun, is that in Yule, your character can take some time to help build up an heir, so that if your character should perish, your heir comes on and inherits some of the stuff for it. It's
Pendragon.
Yeah, absolutely, Pendragon. And I just thought it was just such a lovely formalized thing. It's something I'd never thought of, like, because I'm sort of person, as you know, I live in the moment. This is my character, whatever. But if I'm like, well, I want to develop connections to an NPC that I would really love, you know, because again, it's that sort of thing. Time moves on. You can't always be adventuring forever. All that sort of thing, and then you still want to carry on this legacy of some sort. So I think thematically it's such a cool idea that I had not thought of. And yeah, some interesting, you know, easy ways of just putting it formally, you know, and spending some time and like developing this character with your lore master. I just thought, yeah, what a cool thing I had not considered before about prepping for your next time should the worst happen, because it could do, you know.
Yeah. And it's a nice way of doing it, and it's a more feeds off the idea of like Bilbo and Frodo, particularly this idea that, you know, and it doesn't have to be like your physical offspring. It can just be someone that you adventure with that's like up and coming. You could Aragorn, who's hundreds of years old, and someone who's in their 40s could be your heir. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be particular to that style. It's just like who would take on in your stead, or is it like you're a captain and there is the younger soldier that you are like training up to become the captain, you know, like of this area. You know, it's those kind of things which I think are, just to clarify that it's not Pendragon and it's like literally my physical flesh and blood, my heir. It's like some more like thematic point of it, like there is in, you know, like the way that Aragorn teaches the Pippin and Merry to fight with swords, you know, and teach, you know, this kind of thing.
And it's interesting because obviously the fellowship phase, that's what the Yule is. It's kind of like a special fellowship phase. There's only certain things you can do at Yule compared to others. So, for example, heal scars is only something you can do at Yule. So, like, you know, taking the time to do it. And again, very reminiscent of Frodo afterwards, coming back and stuff. But you've got stuff like, you know, recount a story. Oh, that sounds great. I like that idea that you can just improvise a story, and it's just taking the time to do that. And, you know, there's other ones like any time, you know, ponder storied and figured maps, you know, study magical items, write a song, you know. Again, it's just like, what, you know, a nice couple of examples of what to do, but easily I would like, as the lore master, what would you like to do? And just having that time for us not to roll any dice and just to talk things through. Because ultimately, this is the thing I wonder, is that whether or not this Lord of the Rings role-playing game, apart from possibly combat, would I ever need to roll, combat and the journey, I don't think I would ever make anyone roll. I think, like, if we got the vibes of what we're doing, especially with that, you know, the stuff, and if, again, depending on someone's actions, I'd be like, okay, you fall to your floor, then I'm going to give you the point, you know, and which is a shame, because as I keep saying, I really like the main mechanic, but I just think, like, when you're doing something that is so cinematic and stuff, and if everyone's on the same page, you don't need the dice to tell you which way to go. But I like these fellowship phases, like the undertakings of like what you can do, and I just thought they were very thematic, and I can imagine it being a really fun, maybe final session that as you do Yule and everyone sort of signs off, you know.
It gives real second breakfast vibes.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention, so like we kind of mentioned, there's these sort of 3 different unique things that you could do, Lord of the Rings. Combat, again, we can go into it a little bit, but, you know, there's different stances that you can do, and obviously it feels very intense, you know, back and forth, you know, so if you don't like combat, you're probably not going to like the One Ring second edition. The council stuff is more about, like, as I said, sort of social interaction, like pleading on behalf of your case, doing some rolling, like a long long test, essentially. Like you just keep doing it until you get a number of successes. If you don't succeed, you could be fully successful, mixed success, all that thing, depending on how many successes your group gets. But I wanted to talk about quickly the journey, about how you get to one place to another, because that ultimately is what Lord of the Rings is about. It's like the ongoing thing. What I do like about it is that everyone has a role to play in the journey. It's not just like, okay, one person is the guide. There has to be a guide, fine.
Yeah.
But everyone else gets to take part in it. You've got the hunter, the lookout, the scout, and maybe you've got more than those 4 people. Great, then you double up. It's just, I thought, great, because there's nothing more boring than just going, well, I guess Terry is the best at perception, so they'll be the guide, and then we'll all just sit here and wait. Like, trying to make you, encourage you to be like, the journey is the important thing. And it's not just like, again, it gets into D&D, we'll roll a random encounter. It's the orcs again. Just leave it. We'll pass it. It makes it matter what happens on the journey, which I just think is so good, because that's what Lord of the Rings is about, getting from A to B. So I just thought that was really cool, that they're like, hey, you do have a part to play in this. And I don't know if you'd use the journey map thing necessarily, but
yes,
I think it's cool. I think it's a nice way to log stuff.
As we said before when we talked about it, it's like it's using that scene-based way of managing exploration, isn't it? I like those that you were talking about. Like, you have when you do all your roles. I thought that what I liked about the events, and I said it earlier, was the fact that you can have a whole event without having to have combat, which I think is really nice.
Yes.
I think it's a really good way of doing it. And I think they've done a really good way of downloading the event target. So you have like the scouts, lookout, you were talking about the different parts of the troop that you're taking that take on those different roles. And then they might actually determine different types of events, which then have a different result, and I quite like that. And I think that's quite I think it's a nice way of simplifying it whilst not having to deal with the combat, which is actually brutal, which is quite nice.
Ultimately, like, I don't really have much more to say on the One Ring without actually playing it. Like I said, I've played that starter set a long time ago, but I think there's bits in it where I'm like, this is really interesting, but then it's waylaid by the denseness of it, and it's some misorganization, I think, in the core book itself, which is a bit off-putting. Like, you've got the physical book there. Like, I think it's a really well quality made physical book. Like, the pages are always really nice with these ones. I like the drawings, again, very thematic and stuff. And it's interesting. I've seen a couple of actual plays of the One Ring, and I know there's like a long-term one that one of our friends, Ed Spence, is running for charity.
Yes,
but they're running this version, the second edition Free League, feat dice one. I'll be interested to know what his thoughts on it are, as someone who's created his own story within this. It's one of those things where I'd be interested to know how it runs, and do you get the same satisfaction out of it? Is it that slow burn, like, heroic fantasy that we want? Is it what we want? Was we've been talking about, this idea of like flawed characters, or is it watered, or is it more muddied because of the dice mechanic? That's what I just thought was just.
Well, I think you're right. I think playing it is the only way to like take it to the next level. You said you. Yeah, I've not watched. Unfortunately, I feel bad because I think everyone has actually been raving about Ed's game. The fourth age that he's been running has been really well received. So I think if people are interested in seeing it played, I would always recommend anything that Ed runs, because he's very talented.
100%.
Black Star, by the way, I'll put a note out for that, which was very good.
I was in that.
Surprise.
That wasn't Lord of the Rings, though. That was Orbital Blues, which was much easier.
Yeah, I know, but it's definitely, I think that's a good place to go next, is watch something like that and then play the game. Yeah, and I would again just reiterate, Ruins of the Lost Realm is good, and they've also brought out a new one which I haven't looked at yet. I've got a copy PDF version on my drive-through. Oh, and that's the other thing to just note is Strider mode is really worth looking at. If you are interested in solo games and you're interested in the Lord of the Rings, I think Strider mode, I didn't reread it for this, which is stupid. I meant to do it, but I have read it originally and thought it was really well presented, and it is really well represented by, well reviewed by a lot of people who say that it's one of the go-tos for like Oracle systems, single solo player systems, and so I would recommend having a look at that if you are so interested.
Which I think would be really cool to do. Like, that's the thing, I guess, if you're worried about like, oh, I need to get people table around, I need to convince people to do it, actually doing it yourself. I know obviously Strider mode, it's different. Thursday's Child is the Vaesen version of the solo mode for that. Like, there's definitely, obviously you lose some bits of it, but it still keeps the core stuff. I think actually in Strider mode you get like an extra combat stance as a result, just to help even out that sort of difficulty. But yeah, I think it's always those things, like if you're not sure, you can at least try it. I think that's what the cool thing is, that you can at least try it out and go, oh, is this for my table, or all that sort of thing. And easily as you were saying, like there's the Ruins of the Lost Realm, Tales from the Lone Lands, Moria Through the Doors of Durin,
and then Moria. There was the Moria one, and
then there's now the Realms of the Free Kings. So there's a mixture of like supplements, source books, but also adventures as well. So there's actually a lot that I think Free League, obviously they're milking that IP, but it's, like, I think there's a lot to go. I personally will always recommend the starter set. That for the first adventure for it, it's very silly, very fun. You go and break into a museum for Bilbo, and obviously hilarity ensues, because I will say that the pre-gens for it, they're very wholesome. You got all the different Baggins's cousins and all that sort of thing. It feels very hijinks, but also like you can really play into it. Like the idea, I remember when we played it, there was somebody who just really liked food, very much like a Winnie the Pooh style, was just constantly eating, but like in the nicest way. And then obviously when they fell, it was like, oh, it's because I saw another pastry, and I was like, I'm just going to grab this pastry before I fall in the river, all that sort of thing. And so that's my big recommendation, is that if you're not sure about it, I agree, Strider mode, try the PDF of it, but yeah, the Wandering starter set is my go-to before maybe advancing to the teenage I'm so dark, with the shadow tests and all sorts with the actual core book. Because ultimately I know people will want to play these games. Like we've talked about it, the narratives and stuff. I'm like, God, these will be really good. So if you want to do it in the world of Lord of the Rings, then it is worth looking at, but just with the caveat of like, it might take you a bit of time to get through the book, and it's okay because it's just written very densely.
That's exactly how to put it into a nutshell. And I think that's the thing. We are going to be doing another Free League. I think we will just put a pin on the fact that you might hear similar things come up when we do that one, is all I was going to say. So I think it's worth keeping that in mind when we come to that and see what we say then, because I'm interested to reread the one we're going to look at next. Not next, but the one after the one, which will be another Free League one, and how... Yes. And I'm going to have it with this eye, and I'll be interested to see, because coming back to it now, how different I feel about it.
I also feel that you and I, even though we both love that, or had that nostalgia for Lord of the Rings and, The Hobbit, and as we've talked about it quite extensively for this, I think the other one you're thinking about, the other Free League one, I think you like that one a lot more, because you've actually run it, and also I think we both like the IP a lot more. I don't know. I definitely would, if I got a choice between watching that IP, I know I'm so cryptic, I know, and watching Lord of the Rings.
Really?
I think I would go for the IP. Yeah, I'd go for the other one.
Would you? Mm-hmm. Would you?
Yeah.
I mean, they're both very, very good.
But they're also very, very different. They're also very, very different. But I would be like...
Technically, I would also probably think that, as they have said, that the setting of the one we're going to be talking about next is also the setting for one of the other Free League properties that they do, because they say they're in the same shared universe, that I would imagine that you would probably watch those ones as well. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
I don't know. I see that you might enjoy that movie equally as much.
How critical we're going there. And even I'm not entirely sure which IP we're now talking about. But yes, I know which one we've agreed to read. So that's fine.
That one. That one. The one where it does that. That is in the same universe. They say it's in the same universe.
That is true. Yes. Okay. Yes, I understand. Yeah. I like the fact no one's going to know exactly what you just did to the camera. But yes. But I'm going to tell you the next one we're going to read.
Yes. And I'm excited to read this.
Yes, this is going to be very interesting. So the next book we've got on our GM's official list, I know we've been talking about lots of different RPGs over the DM's Book Club. We're going to look at Shadowdark, the RPG. Shadowdark, it's I'm just reading it off the website now. It's published by the Arcane Library, and it is old school gaming modernized. Jump into this critically acclaimed TTRPG that, this is in the marketing copy, raised $1.3 million over Kickstarter.
Yeah.
One book, all you need to play. In 2024, it won 3 Castle Awards for Best Game Design, but also 4 Golden Ennies, including Product of the Year, Best Game, Best Rules, and Best Layout and Design. This was huge at Gen Con last year. I was stunned when this won, because I'll be honest, on first glance, it's not my kind of game at all. So it'll be interesting to see what you think of it, Hamilton. Because it's one of those things where I was like, really, this?
My first impression is there are a lot of people who love this sort of thing. Have you said the name yet? Have you actually said the name?
Shadow Dark. Yes, I said it right at the beginning.
I was like, wait, did you say? Yeah, they did another. The Western Reaches was coming out just as I was doing my Kickstarter, and I lost a few people to it as well because they were like, "Oh, I'm going to go for Shadow Dark because that's just come out, and I want to spend all my money on that." I was like, "Bugger!" But it's very. It looks beautiful. I think it's what is amazing about it. What I find quite incredible, and I think it's something I'm finding through what I'm doing, is that people fecking love old D&D, and the unfortunate fact is, and I can only admit it myself, is that I think the way I'm going right now is I don't think I've read a good D&D book for a bloody long time. And when we've gone back and looked at things like Planescape and looked at things like Spelljammer back in the day, and you go, wow, what incredible, amazing ideas and thoughts and concepts that are coming out of this place, and really interesting writing, humorous, fun, adventurous, great, I want to jump in, that we just don't get these days, is why things like Shadow Dark does incredibly well. And when someone does it with real skill, but also somehow hits that slightly wonky graphic design, but so well done that you would see it done with exactly the same fonts and art in a really bad way that it's done, but somehow it's done well that you're really pissed off about it. You're like, how have you used that font and just put a thick black outline on it, and it looks so damn well done.
It looks so good. Yeah. So I'll read out what it says here. So in Shadow Dark RPG, you and your group of crawlers use magic, steel, and wits to delve into mysterious ruins, lost cities, and monster-infested depths. Wondrous treasure and long-forgotten secrets await you, but don't let your last torch burn out, or you could be swallowed by the Shadow Dark. 5th edition players will find what they've been waiting for, an intuitive and complete TTRPG that serves as a seamless bridge into the heart of old-school Renaissance. And old-school gamers will find a system that is familiar and nostalgic, with a major life quality upgrades that modernize the old-school experience. Your legend awaits, crawler. Lift your blade, light your torch, and plunge into the unknown depths of the Shadow Dark. Yeah. Interesting. I'll be interested to know your thoughts of it. Certainly after our discussion about Mothership, I'll be honest. But I do think this might appeal to you a little bit more. But I will say, interesting enough, there is a solo version called Solo Dark, which is free to get. But you still need I still think you need the
original book.
So that is it for this episode of the GM's Book Club. Obviously, as we said, we'll be back again for Shadow Dark. Obviously, come check us out on the same feed and listen to the DM's Book Club. We've got all of our links to both Hamilton's Theatre Macabre YouTube channel and Warhammer stuff. Obviously, I've got all my stuff as well. Yeah, we have hands.
You'll see Fiona and I on there talking about the Old World role-playing game.
Yes.
Probably by the time this has come out, so that will be up hopefully tomorrow our time right now, so before this. So please go see that, and you can hear us talk about another role-playing game, and that might actually come up on this feed anyway at some point if you can't bother to look at it visually.
You can't. If you like, I like the sound of you, but you do look completely different to how I imagine you, and weird. So I just want to listen to your voices.
If people haven't seen us and want to draw what they think we look like, I would love to see that. That would be such a fun thing. Go into the Discord and show me a photo of what you think my voice is. Someone said the other day, it's like listening to Simon Amstel, and I was like, I'll take that.
That's wild. Oh my god! Like, I actually see that from the way you speak. That's such an interesting comment.
That's not, I would never see. I never think that, but I'm like, I'll take it. I'll take it.
I'll take it. I think you should take it. So the thing is, what I'd like the idea, because I remember that there's. I'll finish off on this small anecdote. I remember watching this is how long ago, CBBC or something like that. And there was the two hosts there, and of course they're like, oh look, we got some drawings in. So this is me of Matt or whatever, and of course it's like, and it goes, we've got one of Angelica, and somebody drew like an alien creature. It's like, blah. And so that's what I expect now, is that people are like, this is what Hamilton looks like, and this is what Fiona looks like, and it was just two like beholders or a kobold or a dragon or something like that. So
if we were a D&D, also say like tag us as a D&D monster you think we are. That would be great. I'll take that as well.
Tag yourself, yeah. Let's bring that back. Bring that back.
Well, yeah, but you don't tag yourself. You tag us. Tag us. Tell us what you think.
Tag GM's Book Club. Absolutely.
Say like what you think Hamilton and Fiona are as actual fiends or other creatures.
Even wandering stuff. Like I feel like just from that introduction, Hamilton is definitely in the Hobbit side of it. I don't know who I'd be. Like I imagine I'd be an elf, but unfortunately, I think I'm more of a dwarf nowadays. Just because I'm
really? Okay,
yeah, I think so. Which is, again, not as a bad thing, but I think everyone's like, oh, I should be an elf, but I'm just like going like, no, I'm getting the shit done. Fuck it. Like, let's get going. Come
Trudging on. Yeah, work hard. Yeah,
quick, back to the mountain. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, friends, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next time to talk about Shadowed Up. But in the meantime, see you
on the flip side of the page.
Bye, everyone. Bye.